Hey guys, Jason with Track Cars. Today we're going to work on something a little bit different. It's not our normal track car, not our normal high performance street car. What we have here is a 2021 Subaru Crosstrek. These are pretty cool little vehicles. They're all very off-road capable. What we're going to do is we're going to actually put a ReadyLift 2-inch lift kit on it and bigger wheels and tires. So if anybody's heard of ReadyLift, you know they make lots of lifts for tons of other vehicles, trucks, Jeeps, you name it, they make it. Well, now they're making things for little Subarus. And we thought it'd be really cool to show you guys the process for installing this lift. And ReadyLift comes with some really quality instructions, some really high quality parts. So I'll step through the install process for you and hopefully add some videos to what they're already supplying. So in case you're interested in doing this, it helps you out. All right, so what we're gonna do first, just to make sure that we know where we end up, we're gonna take some measurements of the vehicle to see how high, what kind of lift we're gonna get out of this with the combination wheels and tires. So I'm gonna measure the front from the floor to the bottom of the wheel well here. We're sitting at 30 3/4 in the front. In the rear, sitting at 31 1/2. So let's go write these down. You don't forget 30 3/4 in the front, 30 3/4, and then 31 1/2. That way, after we install the lift and the wheels and tires, when the whole vehicle's up a little bit higher, we'll know what our delta is at the end. Okay, so we've got our vehicle up in the air and all the wheels off. I wanted to show you basically the process for what we're doing. This is the call it upper spacer that goes in the front. So the general idea is we're gonna take the strut loose from the top, let the whole assembly come down, and we're gonna put this spacer in between the top of the strut and where it mounts to up in the body here. What that's gonna do is gonna pull everything down, and essentially at the same time, it's gonna cause the body to go up this extra 2 inches here. And we'll do that on each side of the front. And then we'll also do that on the rear. The rear has another very similar style spacer. It will go on the top of the shock and coil spring assembly here in the rear. So we'll take that loose, bring it down, put it on top, and again, it'll bring up the whole body just like in the front. We're gonna, follow the ReadyLift instructions to a T. If there's something that comes up, I'll let you know. I'll show you during the process here what we're doing. I'll just have little snippets of basically the major steps, and hopefully it helps. Okay, so the first few steps have you getting things out of the way. The first thing is the sway bar end link here. This takes a 17 millimeter, mounts to the strut right there. The nut is real easy to come off the back side here. Do both sides because this bar runs to the other side of the vehicle. So go ahead and take both sides loose. You'll have to pop this ABS line out of this little hole right here. I got this cool little spreader tool. If you don't have one, you should consider adding one because it's got so much benefits. Anytime you got these little push pins, this little thing just goes right underneath the head like that and then pops it up. Your racks off. And then another thing you'll take loose is the brake line. We just take it loose from the strut here and we'll reattach it later. So it just bolts in right there. We'll take it loose. We'll end up flipping this over later, but the instructions tell you exactly what to do. Okay, so the next step is we gotta take these two big bolts out of the strut. There's something to watch out for on this though. This upper bolt is what's called a cam bolt. So this actually affects your alignment. It sits on an eccentric here. So the orientation of this bolt is going to be real important. And you'll see it's got this, it's going to be really hard to see, but in your strut, you'll see this inscribed little line there. What I'm going to do is take this cam bolt and mark a black spot, mark a line right there that matches with that little line right there, just for reference when we reassemble it. And you don't want to get these bolts mixed up when you go back together top to bottom, because this needs to be the top and this needs to be the bottom. So just make sure you understand that, and this will help on reassembly. Okay, so I backed the two bolts out, took them out of the lower strut and pulled it apart. One thing you need to note is you need to support the strut or the lower control arm, because the whole unit will want to just swing out of the way, and it puts a lot of strain on your ABS cable here. So you don't want to have any strain on this. So make sure you either have a jack or something underneath this lower control arm to keep the weight from wanting to just put all this in a bind. And we can still get the strut off, which is the next step. We'll have to go up top, take the bolts out of the strut mount, and then we'll just slide it down and put the new spacer block on there. Okay, so we have our complete strut assembly here taken off our driver's side. I want to go over something that's kind of what's very important for the install, but it's also kind of vehicle dynamics. So when you take a vehicle and when the suspension compresses and extends, the camber changes on the tire. So that's how much the tire tilts at the top. So when it's loaded and sitting on the ground like this and it's low, it's got a lot of what they call negative camber. It's pointed towards the inside of the car. When you start to unload a car, that tire starts to straighten up. So in these ReadyLift brackets, you'll notice that the new mount bolts are not actually directly in line with the old ones. And that's really smart, because what that's doing, if you look at this, the instructions say a certain way to put it on. This is how it goes on, just like this. And if you look at the top of this, you see these bolt holes, these bolts and these studs are not actually in line. Well, so when this gets bolted into the body of the car, you'll see the strut is actually leaning more towards the inside. And that's because you're raising the vehicle up. So we talked about it's going to naturally want to gain positive camber or stand the tire straight up, or sometimes even go past straight up and start to stick out at the top. And these spacer blocks have got this offset built into them, so you can gain your negative camber back. So that's pretty slick, and will help us on the alignment later on when we have to get this thing, the front end aligned on. Okay, so we've got the strut back in there. It takes a couple people, so get somebody to help you, and you line your 3 bolts in at the top of the strut. You put your knuckle back on here, and you put your bolts back in. Remember, your cam bolt goes in the top. Keep everything loose. The instructions tell you to max out your negative camber. So like we just talked about, if you watch this thing as I'm spinning this bolt, you'll see this hub pull in and out, just like that. What you want to do is get it all the way in, kind of like that. And the instructions will tell you all the lines on the bolt head are on the inside of the vehicle. So that's where we want it to give us all our negative camber back, because we extended the strut and made everything taller. So, and then we'll tighten these up to 95 foot-pounds, and then we'll start putting our little bracket pieces on to compensate for the extra height, and then should be finished up. Okay, after messing around with the brake line thing a little bit more, this I'm pretty sure is the way you want it to go. It does have a little bit of a twist in it, and we'll put up a little bit of a fight. But the important thing is to keep this metal bracket piece, or this metal hose crimp piece, inside this metal bracket. Because if you flip it around, then you've got the rubber rubbing on this metal right here. So you want to make sure that you keep it metal to metal and not rubber to metal. And everything else should be all buttoned up here. Got our bolts torqued to 95 foot-pounds. Got our camber maxed out, and struts in with the spacer installed. So everything's tight up top. So get ready to move to the rear. Okay, so we've gotten everything buttoned back up here. We've got the new bracket that extends the sway bar end link. I got that bolted on. It's got a spacer that goes underneath on the sway bar side, and hardware on the back here. Make sure you get all that tight. My brake lines are tight. This ABS cable's out of the way. Both sides are done now on the front. So then we'll be moving on here to the rear. So here we are in the trunk. That little pop-up tool I showed you earlier. Here it is getting used again. One of the best tools you can have for these newer cars. So what we gotta do is we gotta get access to the top of the struts in the rear here. So you come in your trunk, the instructions say how to do this. You pull these foam blocks out. And the panel should be right here. Pops up pretty easily. Pops out, and there it is. Those are the 2 bolts you get to. Okay, so on the rear here, the instructions have you loosen up every of the control arm bolts. The problem with that is you could maybe mess up your alignment. We found out that if you just take the lower bolt out here, support it with a jack stand, this bolt will come out real easily. This one arm is loose. The instructions have you do this anyway. And then the whole unit will come out. It's easier instead of taking everything else loose. The problem with taking everything else loose also, when you go to tighten everything back up, you're supposed to tighten all these control arm bolts up loose with the car, or tighten them all back up with the car fully loaded, which is a little bit harder when it's sitting on the ground. So if you don't actually break them loose, you don't have any memory left in your control arm bushings, and it still comes out just as easy even if you didn't take those loose. So that's just the way we did it. You can do it this way or not, or follow the instructions verbatim if you'd like. All right, so the rears are installed up in there. Like we said, we were able to just take this bolt out of the shock and take this one bolt out and slide everything down. And then we're able to put the jack underneath it and kind of lower the car back down and get everything lined back up, and the bolts popped right in. So we didn't have to take any of the other control arm bolts loose. Just seems simpler this way. And you don't have to worry about tightening them up or messing your alignment up too bad. We do recommend, of course, you get an alignment on this when you're done, but at least it will be straight enough so that you can get to where you're going with it. Here are the 2 tires mounted side by side. You can see the height difference is very noticeable. I'm gonna estimate, oh gosh, probably 2 inches total, so that's 1 inch on the diameter. So it's a lot bigger, a lot more aggressive. Looks really cool. So can't wait to see them on the Subaru. All right, here's the finished product. As you can see, we'll take some measurements here in just a second. But I was letting you guys know that we trimmed down here. And we also just removed the mud flap because it was still rubbing no matter what we did right here. We removed the mud flap. And then the instructions in the lift kit tell you what to do with this fender liner, but basically what you do is you take it loose from the bottom, you push it forward 1 inch, and then you re-drill your holes and then you repin it, because it will rub right here without doing that. So we got that issue fixed, and we ended up having to take the rear mud flap off. And here are the final numbers. You can see we gained 2 1/4 inches front and rear on the lift, so which is nice. Came up evenly. And again, one more shot of the finished product. How much more aggressive it looks. Is ready for the off-road, that's for sure. Very cool. All right, guys, I hope you got something from this. And as my son says, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks.